So what am I doing in Moscow? How did I end up here on a 3-month trip? In short, I'm looking for a wife and I'm looking to have a family. Of course, there's no point having a wife without children. It must be the definition of stupidity. And I'm also checking out Russia as an option, as a long-term living option. Firstly, I'll give you a little bit of a backstory on me so you know what I'm up to in life. And then I'll talk about what's been happening here in Moscow, how the dating scene has been, who I've met, how it's played out, all the things I've learned, and all the screens that I'm applying to girls. So firstly, now I'm 44, so I'm getting on a little bit, right? Now at 38, I was living in my home city of Melbourne, and I was dating quite a bit. I have access to girls there. I seem to have an SMV high enough to attract women who are a bit above average and kind of reasonable people, but nothing was really working out there. And also I was looking around at my parents' generation and then my generation, looking at friends and stuff, looking at how marriages were playing out, the dynamics in the relationships, what happens when people got divorced, this kind of stuff. And I'm just like, you know what? I don't think I want to play this game, right? I think I want to go somewhere overseas to a more traditional environment and try my luck there. So at 38, I decided, look, I've got a full-time job now. I took 2 more part-time jobs, had some side hustle stuff going as well, and I worked my ass off for 2 years. At the start of 2020, I left Australia. Now, of course, friggin' COVID came and I ended up going back to Australia and being locked in there for a couple of years. Most people have a bit of a, COVID ruined my life kind of story, so I'm not gonna bore you with mine. But what happened was a little country called Belarus was open and I'm like, okay, I can sit in my apartment here in Melbourne staring at the friggin' wall, or I can just go somewhere and live a normal life, right? I'd rather go to Southeast Asia. That's where I see my longer term future. But look, Belarus is open. I've got a friend of a friend who lives there and I spoke to him on the phone. He's like, yeah, man, everything's cool here. You'll be fine. Don't worry about it. I'm like, cool. I'm a pretty pragmatic, diplomatic kind of guy. I'm like, yeah, I can probably have a good life there for 6 months or 12 months, or however long it takes for this whole COVID thing to blow over, right? So while I was in Belarus, I learned quite a bit of Russian, because Russian is the #1 language in the country of Belarus. And I'm quite fond of the country Belarus. I mean, you'll see on my channel, I generally paint a pretty positive picture of this country. I like it, but I think it's maybe not quite for me. And as soon as everything else opened up and looked like it was going to stay open, I left back to a country called Indonesia. I spent maybe 4, 5, even 6 weeks just going to different cities, different regions inside Indonesia, and I eventually settled on Aceh. Aceh's in the far north. It's famous, well, partly because of the tsunami that happened a few years ago, but also because it's somewhat under a soft version of Sharia law, so it's quite Islamic by nature. In this kind of environment, there's a lot of pros and cons, right? But I really thought the pros were pretty good. A few little cons here and there, but I'm like, you know what? I'm feeling this. This is where I can live. On the outskirts of a little town there, I can buy a little bit of land, have my fruit, vegetables, my trees, a few chickens, some other animals to eat as well. And I can see myself having a family here and living out my years in this environment. So I was propped up there, living my best life, living that island kind of life. And I was looking for girls. I was trying to find a potential wife, and I made a lot of friends, had a lot of networks, but it's kind of hard to find people in that environment. Partly because people get married young, that's a big thing, like I'm talking 18, 19, 20, but also because there's no kind of central place where people have to go. Everyone's just on a motorbike, so I might see like some nice looking girls go past on a motorbike, but I don't know where to find them to speak to them, right? So the months were kind of wearing on and I just wasn't finding anyone suitable. At this point, immigration was starting to bust my balls a bit. Why are you coming in and out on visas all the time? You've done like 6 months of visas in a row, blah, blah, blah. So I'm like, all right, I have to be realistic here. I don't seem able to find a wife in this environment, right? Or at least if I can, it'll take me a long, long time. And it's really like a needle in a haystack kind of situation. Again, just the kind of geography of how and logistics of how people move and interact in that kind of environment. Now for me, Indonesia is the place that I want to be in Southeast Asia. So I'm like, okay, I can go to maybe Thailand or this kind of place, but it's not as suitable for me, right? So I'm thinking, okay, where can I go with the primary objective of just finding a wife, like full stop, and then worry about the other stuff later, right? So I'm like, I can go back to Belarus, but it didn't quite fit me. And I'm thinking, okay, look, I speak Russian. I know that part of the world. Maybe I'll try Russia. It might be a good option. Now I can live in Belarus, but that could happen. It's a nice place. I'm just concerned a lot about their future. That's my concern about them. Whereas Russia, okay, obviously things are happening at the moment, but as a civilization, it's still going to be here, you know what I mean? And of course, a big barrier to anywhere where I want to go is the language. And I can speak a lot of Russian already from living in Belarus. So I'm like, all right, as unorthodox it is in this current year, I'm going to go there. I could literally make an entire video on the process and the dramas associated with getting the visa, but I won't, I'm here. So I came here, all right, I got 3 months, right? And I'm not going to fuck around, right? I'm not here just to meet 3 girls or something. I'm here to meet a lot of girls. I want to see what a Russian girl's like. Is it conceivable that I could spend the rest of my life with a Russian woman? Could I even raise my children as Russian people, right? So these are kind of big things, and for that, I'm a scientist, right? I'm an economist, I'm a researcher. I believe in data, so I need to meet a friggin' lot of people. After 2 weeks, I had a bit of a look around, and I'm thinking, look, just in terms of understanding the culture, Moscow's my best bet. There's just an infinite number of women walking around. There's also a lot more English here, although not a great deal. And of course, capital cities tend to breed more kind of liberal ideology, so that people are maybe a bit more open to speaking or getting to know a foreigner. I don't really want to spend the rest of my life in Moscow, but look, maybe the girl I meet came from somewhere smaller and we can move back there, just as an example, right? So I'm like, okay, let's get serious here. Let's start talking to a lot of girls. Let's start meeting a lot of girls. As you could probably guess, I'm a pretty rational guy. At least for a human being, I consider myself to be fairly rational. So I don't believe in just finding a girl who I'm sexually attracted to, having a whole lot of sex, kind of having that connection, that kind of hormonal bondal connection, and then just kind of having kids with them, right? This is just dumb. So what I want to do and what I've been doing is having a series of screens, and I've got to be realistic here, right? It's not like online shopping or something where you pick, okay, I'll have XXL in black with long sleeves. It doesn't work that way with human beings. So I'm going to be flexible, and I'll talk through this. So first of all, I'm thinking, okay, the age. What's a reasonable age to have as a wife and as a long-term team member, I guess, for a family together, right? So I'm like, okay, well, I'm 44, mate. So I'm not exactly a spring chicken myself. I'm in good shape, but no chronic problems. Like, I feel my body still works as good as ever, and I feel fit and strong and healthy, so that's good. But in reality, it's still 4'4". It's quite old. So I'm thinking, all right, well, to be able to relate to somebody, they're going to have to be kind of closer to my age, right? So maybe say 34 to 44, based on the relating kind of thing. Now, I am also very aware that Russia's a harsher environment than Australia in a lot of ways. And as a result, and a result of other things, Russians do mature a bit faster. So maybe I can look a bit more south, maybe 30 to 44 might be an okay range on that variable. But of course, there's a big problem there, right? The whole point of marriage is to have children. And I don't want to be having children with a 40-year-old. That's just really obvious. It takes longer to get pregnant. If they can get pregnant, it takes a huge toll on the woman at that kind of age. So, I would want to have minimum 2 children, but probably 3, and depending on the girl, maybe up to as many as 5, right? So 0 children and 1 children, that's not an option for me. If that's the option, I don't want to opt into this situation. So physically, being able to get pregnant easily, having healthy babies, being able to physically endure the pregnancy and birth and so forth, I'd want it to be maybe in the range of, say, 18 to 29, right? So already we've got a bit of a clash there, right? We've got a clash. The reality of being a man is that a woman's appearance matters. Now, I try to minimize this. When I'm thinking of my algorithm and my weighting of what's important in a woman, I try to think that, look, minimize the looks part, because in the end, everyone looks terrible, right? And you're gonna get bored, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter too much. So I'm trying to minimize that looks part, but in reality, if you marry a 35-year-old, I can look around here, right? Women just fall off this cliff at about 35, and by the time they're 40, a lot of them look pretty babushka-y. Some look okay still, but I can see here that people really fall off a cliff. Women really fall off a cliff in terms of their appearance. So getting with a 35-year-old is a really bad idea if you wanted to preserve her looks for at least some period of time, at least the first 5-10 years. So again, the girl will have to be somewhere around kind of 18 to 29, or maybe kind of 31, 32, but again, that kind of range that's clashing with the relatability age range, which was about 32 to 44, I think I said. Before I get to my experiences when it comes to the age range thing, as I've been collecting data, i.e. meeting women and going on dates and having conversations and so forth, I'm really noticing that with every year that the woman's older and still single, she's a bit more abrasive, she's less easy to get along with, she doesn't really value having a family, doesn't really value having a husband, and just as a person is just harder to get along with, just lacks empathy, more focus, narrow focus on their job, this kind of stuff. And I'm seeing that, I would say once a woman's in her 30s, it's starting to get pretty terminal, to be fair, and I'm noticing quite extremely that actually the best women for marriage are usually with their marriage partner by the time they're about 18 or 19. And I'm seeing that the really good ones, so I've met a lot of girls that have a boyfriend, that are married, etc. And I've just noticed now, I can feel the energy on these girls, right? These real wifeable girls, these top quality wives and mothers to be. I can really feel their energy when I meet them. And they've always got a boyfriend, they're always married. There was a 22-year-old who was married, a 24-year-old who's kind of almost married. And I can really feel these girls. I'm like, geez, these are the best ones. But I have to get them when they're like 18, and it's like, mate, I'm 44. I mean, that generation gap is real, right? It's going to be a weird kind of dynamic, I think. But as I say, from my experiences, from about 25 onwards, every year just makes the person a little bit less reasonable. Again, a bit more abrasive, a bit more difficult to get along with just in general, even just as a friend it would be, right? So men have not chosen them and they've not chosen a man, right? And every year that goes past, it's a scream for her just, I don't know, not being able to relate to other human beings well, not being able to be reasonable. And you don't want to get locked in to a lifetime situation having children with someone like this. So you really got to put an upper limit on these things. So I want to go as low as possible. I'm going to leave 18, 19 out. I can't do this. But I reckon 20, if she has the right upbringing, if she's particularly religious, really wants to have a family and that's her priority at 20, maybe I can get down to 20. Maybe. But it's pushing it. I'd say 95% of 20-year-olds are probably out, but I think there will be some outliers at those younger ages. So I'm going to be open to 20. In terms of the upper limit, oh man, I want to say 29, but I think that again, there's going to be some outliers. Maybe someone was married, something happened to the husband. So I'm going to say 32 as the upper limit. So the woman needs to be from 20 to 32. In terms of how good looking she is, I definitely don't want a model. I don't want a thought. I just see that on average, girls that are very attractive, they tend to be a little bit more self-absorbed. They've just had easier lives. You know, they haven't done as much to get where they are. They get a lot of attention. I noticed that more attractive women tend to have less children. Ironically, tend to have less children, which is the opposite direction that I want to go. They also tend to be a bit more materialistic. These are just probabilities, yeah? Everything I'm talking about today is talking about probabilities. So don't get your knickers in a knot, stressing out. No. Just, yeah, of course there's exceptions. But on average, I'm seeing that more attractive women are more worried about the brand of their handbag and less worried about having kids, right? This is the reality. The resources that they want from the man are more for themselves to keep boosting up their sense of self-esteem and blah, blah, blah. So there will be exceptions. I am aware of this. But I think as a general rule, I don't want a girl who's maybe any higher than about a 7 out of 10, right? So 8s, 9s, 10s, just eliminate them. Done. Not going to talk to the hottest girls. In terms of a bottom limit, look, as I'm saying, looks don't matter that much, you know? You just got to be decent, really. So 5, 6, 7, that's totally cool. 5, 6, 7, I'm okay with that. Reasonably slim frame. I don't want her blowing out and being 120 kilos. Just, you know, I'm in good shape at 44. She should also be in good shape at 44. So that stuff's kind of easy. The other stuff's a bit more complicated. I mean, obviously any classic red flags. Ideally the parents will be together. Blah, blah, blah. She's more of a kind of feminine feeling woman. She really wants to have children. She loves children. She wants to have a family. You know, she wants to have that kind of psychology. But I realize there's going to be disconnects between us, right? I can't get the exact AI generated wife. So I recognize that, you know, I'm a human and she'll also be human. So I know that she's going to have traits that are kind of annoying sometimes or whatever, but that's part of a bigger picture. So I'm cool with this. So other than just having a tendency towards being motherly, feminine, and a good wife, other than that, I'm kind of leaving it open. and you just got to just feel how you get along. Do you kind of get each other? Are you at a similar level when you talk? Like, yeah, so I want to leave a fair bit of flexibility there, because I recognize I have to, right? I have to. Just to be realistic, I can't meet 1 million girls, right? And focus on the best one. So that's what I've been thinking about, and I've been in Moscow now for 2 weeks and 5 days, and I'm not sure how many women I've met, but it's a lot. It's a lot. I've spoken to a lot of girls. I did try online in the beginning, and I have to say it was really terrible. It wasn't just bad, it was really bad. Generally speaking, could only match with girls kind of around my age, plus minus a couple of years. Generally pretty low quality girls, and as I say, once the woman's still single and getting past kind of 35, unless she's gone through some kind of self-development change or something, and some conscious kind of learning and whatever, but if she's just kind of primal brain instinct kind of stuff, she's probably really hard to get along with, and that's kind of what I found with a handful of people I met. I think I had 3 dates maybe from online. They're all out of my age range, but I wanted to have the interactions. Again, I believe in data. I don't want a theory. I want data. What do people like? What's going on? And it definitely cemented the idea of the age range that I'm looking for. And I definitely found that online was just terrible, really. I was really surprised at how bad it is and how different the online market is compared to the real world market, right? So I've just got absolutely mental approaching heaps of girls in all different kinds of situations, having conversations, getting the vibe of what's going on here, working out what are these girls about, what are their mentality, what's the range of a normal girl, what's the range of kind of what I can tolerate or what I'll enjoy even, who like me, who's interested in me, what type of girl, again, what kind of ages, attractiveness levels, all this kind of stuff. Literally just gathering all the data. In a way, it's been a lot of fun, but it's brutal stuff. I tell you what, like the average guy couldn't just do what I've just done in the last 2 weeks and 5 days. Speak to that many girls, a lot of harsh rejections, a lot of rudeness, a lot of politeness, a lot of niceness, a lot of interesting conversations. It's been a very interesting time, and as I say, this has been my prime focus, right? I'm not here to just like meet someone when it kind of works out. I'm here to like force the issue. I'm here to see what these girls are about and how does it fit with my life goals. I've definitely learned a lot of things. I think the biggest and most important lesson, and I mentioned this earlier, but I'm going to say it again because it's so important, and it makes me and probably other guys in the West who are brought up as feminists, this kind of makes us feel uncomfortable. The reality is that the best girls, they're snapped up at 16, 17, 18, 19. They might still just be girlfriend at 22, but they've been with the guy for 5 years, and they'll marry him next year and have kids at 25, 27, 29. That's kind of the timeline, right? And once the girl's past around 25, it's an incredible red flag. Now, of course, there's a lot of variation, right, around the mean. So this is the part where it's played. But on a macro level, I'm in a bit of a tricky situation, I think, all in all. But because I'm willing to meet so many girls, I'm willing to have so many conversations and make this happen, I'm still able to find enough girls that are potentially dateable, potentially marriable. And I see at a macro level that Moscow is really for the workers. Like, the girls that come here are really career orientated. They've been raised to be a part of the market economy. And at a macro level, it's probably a pretty bad screen. But nonetheless, I figure just sheer volume, I'll be able to find some girls that might be suitable and that think that I'm suitable back. Because there's always girls that fall between the cracks, and there's always outliers and whatever. Overall, the market here, it's pretty rough. I tell you what, it's for the average Western guy coming here, don't expect to attract a woman who's much better than you'd be able to get back in your own country. It's a very competitive market. Girls rate themselves. And like everywhere in the world, as of 2023, girls are willing to hold out, right? If a girl is a 5, in her mind, she's been told that you deserve an 8, right? Don't settle, girl, don't settle. So you got 5s that are waiting for 8s, right? So if a 5 meets a 6, right, the guy's a 6, she's a 5. There's no chemistry. He's not that interesting. No. So you've got this massive amount of single girls, and girls that are willing just to stay single, despite the market giving them every signal that they need to be changing their standards, but they've got these lofty, unrealistic standards. And a lot of these girls are holding to them. Now, really obviously, these girls just end up single, right? 35, 40, 45. The number of cats in the apartment goes up, blah, blah, blah. But it doesn't help us guys at all to know this, right? Because we still have to deal with this kind of market. So if you are like a mid-range guy, like actual mid-range, not an average guy, meaning you're kind of low-quality guy. If you're like a mid-range guy, you're not going to do a lot better here than you would in your own country. Maybe you do a little bit better, but there's other things to consider, the cultural differences and so forth that make things complicated, the language barriers as well. So I'm seeing a lot of foreign and local guys complaining about women's unrealistic expectations, essentially. And this doesn't kind of augur well for the dating market here. So all in all, if the woman's still single at say 25-ish, I'm just seeing that men are just not much of a priority for her. That's really what it is. So if a decent guy shows up, she doesn't really care. Her valuation of men is not very high in terms of her priorities. And this is a cultural problem, right? It's not the girl's an idiot, right? The culture's taught her this. The culture's taught her that it's more important to produce goods and services, to consume goods and services, right, than it is to have a husband and a family. So this is a cultural problem, obviously. I'm about to give you more detail about the girls I'm involved with now or potentially involved in, because I usually don't share this stuff, right? Like on the channel, I don't give personal information of this nature. I might give some lessons about red flags or just experiences I've had to help you, but I don't really share my situation. But I can see now I've got 4, maybe 5 girls who we've texted a bit, met up with at least once. They're an age range between 24 and 30. All but one of those speak reasonable English. One, we have to communicate in Russian, and this has been a bit of a problem. I've met a few girls and we've only spoken in Russian, and I just noticed when you go on a date, it's like a simple 1-hour coffee or something, it kind of gets a bit boring. Like, because I can't really express myself that well, and I can't really understand her that well when she kind of digs a bit deeper. So you can kind of feel that kind of chemistry wearing off on that first date. There's still one girl that I'm hoping to catch up with, maybe even today. We've spoken only in Russian, but the other girls we've discussed and chatted mainly just in English. The process is pretty slow. I mean, these girls are busy, they prioritize their jobs, and somehow, like, I won't say the jobs that the girls have, I don't want to obviously help identify them or whatever, but these are kind of high-level professions, all of them. And it's like, man, they're busy, they're working long hours, they have friends, they have social activities. These girls are really being set up to fail, really. It's really difficult to get to know somebody, and I think the process of getting to know somebody here will probably take at least a few weeks until both parties realize, okay, this is a potentially good one, and maybe prioritize them a little bit more. But you can see in this early stage of the dating process, you can see that the girls are just like not really willing to change their schedule or shuffle their schedule around a bit to try to accelerate getting to know you. And I guess that's got a lot to do with the fact they don't really know me. We might have spoken for 5 minutes on the train or something, and I can't expect a girl to just come out and meet and hang out for a whole evening. So it's quite difficult to gauge the girl's level of interest. And of course it's difficult for me because I need FaceTime to talk to them, to engage with them, to learn about them. I want to see each way they respond to different questions, when they talk, their mannerisms and so forth, all these little micro indicators. I want to read on them and get a sense of what kind of person they are as well. And this all takes a fair bit of time. And then of course I don't know their motivations. I mean, maybe they're just thinking, hey, I can practice my English. Here's a guy who speaks English, I want to improve my English. I'll just chat to this guy, you know. You just don't know the motivations of different girls. But what I do see is, if they are kind of engaging, they are responding fairly quickly to text messages, unless they've got some kind of impulsive mental health problem, chances are they are genuinely interested. This is what I'm seeing, and if they're not, they just drop off the radar pretty quickly. So right now, at the time of filming this, I've got around, I'd say 6.5 weeks to go on my visa, and I need to work out what I'm going to do, because long term I wouldn't want to live in Moscow. And I see that all these girls, very seldomly would any of these girls move back to where they're from, right? They all love Moscow, they love the life here. So I see there's a real big culture clash there. So although I've got kind of, 4 or 5 girls there that are texting regularly, kind of getting to know each other, trying to meet up with again and again, and then kind of screen through those, I am aware that, okay, we're in Moscow, And it's not, again, it's not really where you'd want to live long term. And these girls that I've met who have been married or have been in serious relationships at a young age, as I said before, they have a different energy about them. They have the wife energy. Like, you can really, because I've had so many friggin' interactions in a short period of time, I'm really tuned in at the moment to just friggin' humans. And I can just feel the energy of the wife type. And I'm like, should I have a go at one of these? Because, I mean, there's a 24-year-old girl who's interested in me, two actually, that are interested in me here. And it's like, okay, that's okay. I'm comfortable with 24. They're comfortable with me, because girls ask your age, man. It's interesting. That's like, if I'm chatting to a girl, just feeling them out, I'm kind of in my head a bit, assessing them, but also trying to put my kind of best foot forward, if you will. And when they ask, skolko vreme let, I'm like, oh, she's shown her cards a bit. She's interesting, but she's seen all the grey hairs there. And she's wondering, how old is this bloke? Is he too old for me or what? So because I have this kind of niggling thing at the back of my head, I want to maybe hang around the universities a little bit for a little while. But the problem with that is that if the girls have come all the way to Moscow for university, they're a Moscovian girl. They've got this hyper ambition, this crazy drive to, and not ambition in a general sense, ambition specifically, produce goods and services, consume goods and services, ego, the kind of masculine ideas, the economic ideas. And if they're ambitious in a family sense, that's great, right? Because that aligns with what I want. But if they're more focused on that stuff, we're never going to really sync together and bring the best out of each other. So I'm thinking I need to go to a smaller city. So I'm going to go to a smaller city. I'm not sure which one just yet, but probably tomorrow, and spend a week there and meet heaps of girls and get a sense, can I jive with a 20-year-old? Is it too young for me or not, right? Again, these girls are much more mature than girls from my own country, probably than girls from your country as well. And if she has that focus, that bent towards family, it can work at that age. And I think that will be the absolute optimal situation. And I'll give it a week, and I'll try to, in a week I can probably talk to 100 people, right? That's not hard. If it doesn't really kind of work out, or it's a bit, they're just kind of not that interested because I'm too old, or I'm just thinking they're not that interesting, so they're too young, then okay, I'll come back to Moscow and I'll play out the girls I've got here, maybe meet a few more and see where that goes. So in summary, how's it all going? Well, in terms of a place to live, look, I could probably live in Russia. I'd much rather live in Southeast Asia, much rather. So there is potential to take a girl with me. I do intend to float my grand plan to these girls at a fairly early stage. Not inviting them, nothing serious, just saying this is my idea, and try and see which girl would gel with that lifestyle, right? Other girls here that would be like, yes, I'd love to live on the island with you and have a whole lot of babies, right? Eat mangoes and coconuts every day. That life is for me. So let's see if some of these girls are like that. But I think here in Moscow, they're just not here. But again, I need to remain flexible because I can't have everything the way I want it. So I may even stay in Russia, I may not. It's livable enough. Again, it's not really ideal. I don't like communist cities, I have to be honest. I think they're mainly ugly. There are beautiful parts to them. Of course, Moscow here is very nice. St. Petersburg and some other larger cities are kind of decent, but a lot of the smaller ones, look, they're pretty run down, not looking great, to be quite fair. So overall, things are going all right. I mean, it's a tough market. These girls have high expectations. I can just sense a level of frustration from local men and foreign men, but this happens in every capital city in the world. I mean, this is just a global phenomenon. Despite some negatives and whatever, I can see, okay, I think Russian women have a lot of depth to them. It's sometimes clunky with the banter, you know what I mean? Like, some girls get the Western banter, most definitely don't, and just think you're a friggin' idiot. This is common, but these girls have a real depth to them. Like a good cohort of Russian girls, they're friggin' smart. And it's not just about IQ smart, it's about like worldly wisdom smart, you know what I mean? So this is very appealing about Russian girls. A typical first date in the West would just be a bit of a banter, have a few drinks. The guy's trying to, bang her, and the girls, I don't know what's in their minds, honestly. But that's kind of what's happening, right? And you're more bantering. You might say a few details about yourself, but nothing too deep. It might be like, how many brothers and sisters do you have? This kind of stuff. But you're probably not going to share anything too deep or talk about anything too deep, right? It's more surface level. Whereas here it's like 5 minutes of surface level, and then it's like, boom, talk about something that's actually friggin' interesting, right? It could be really personal. How many girls I've known in Belarus and Russia who I've known for less than 20 minutes who start telling me about their psychologist. Like, if you're a Westerner, you'll start laughing at that. If you're a Russian or Belarusian, it's like, yeah, okay, and what? You know, it's a totally different attitude. So I kind of like here that you can get to the soul. Yeah, this Russian word, you'll probably know it, dusha, the soul of the woman. You can get to that faster, and you can show your soul because it's socially appropriate to do so. So I feel like you could make a judgment on a woman here a lot faster than maybe you could in the West. And overall, I think the culture here is still pretty solid. You have the typical Western leftist elitist wannabes hanging around. You have your kind of rednecks like you do in every country, but I think there's a pretty solid core of people here with a pretty solid sense of self, pretty solid sense of their own culture and their own history. I think this is, for those reasons, a fairly good civilization to get involved with. Alright, by the time I upload this in a few days' time, I'm probably in some small town already. But nonetheless, if this video is quite popular, if you get a lot of comments, a lot of likes and a lot of views, I'll give you guys another update maybe in 2 or 3 weeks' time.